your career, business, life, and relationships. This is the Growth to Freedom Show. Now, here is your host, Dan Kuschell.
Welcome to growthtofreedom.com, the show that helps you transform your life, business, and relationships. I'm Dan Kuschell, and thanks for making us part of your day. We've got a great show today to bring you more clarity, confidence, and capabilities. Our show presented today by Done For You Solutions. All of our guests brought to you through the Done For You Solutions hotline. We'd love to connect with you. You can join us on Twitter at Dan_Kuschell. That's Dan, D-A-N, _Kuschell, or email us at info@growthtofreedom.com. By the way, stay tuned. We've got a special gift package for you today that's going to be free. We've got a limited amount of these available. We'll tell you all about that near the end of the show, so let's dive into it today. I have a question for you. Do you believe that your ability to handle challenges or obstacles will make a difference in your success? Well, if so, you're going to love today's show, because I believe that you can tell the size of the person by the obstacles it takes to knock them off track. You can tell the size of the person by the things they can handle. I mean, anybody can be a sunny day kind of person. It takes someone who's a true champion to be able to deal with adversity. You can learn more about someone's true character in literally 5 minutes of adversity than you can in years when everything's going well, right? So today's show, we have a very special guest, and I'm honored. I was preparing for the show last night and had a chance to go review Dr. Jeremy Weisz's website, and I encourage you to go to inspiredinsider.com. That's inspiredinsider.com, and hear the story of why he created and founded inspiredinsider.com in the first place. And I was touched as his great-grandfather shared the story. And I'm not going to go into it because I'm going to let Dr. Jeremy Weisz go into it with you. But it blew me away, and I feel so humbled. He's a servant leader. He's the founder of Inspired Insider, Chiropractical Solutions, chiropracticjobfinder.com. He's a producer at Mixergy, where he brings together, he works with people who are doers, thinkers, mentors, with a passion to change you. That's right, you, as you're watching right now, as you're listening. And in my mind, Dr. Jeremy Weisz is a healer, and he has a similar mission that we do with the show, and that's to reduce suffering. Dr. Weisz, glad to have you on the show.
Dan, it's such an honor to be with you. Thank you for that amazing intro.
Oh, well, you're welcome. Well, I'd love to dive right into it because you've got a wealth of wisdom. I mean, you've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of thought leaders, experts. I mean, people like the founders of Atari, P90X, Einstein Bagels, and the list goes on and on. For our viewers, for our listeners right now, why don't we dive into it? Who is Dr. Jeremy Weisz, or Dr. J, as your friends call you? Who is Dr. J, and what does he do? What's he all about?
Well, husband, father to two little girls, basketball player, underhand fast pitch softball player, yet to play catch with you. Grew up in suburb of Chicago, Wisconsin Badger, and kind of what you mentioned, chiropractor, just helping people with aches and pains, nutritional company founder, and host of podcast Inspired Insider, where I interview inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders, hopefully to have you on at some point too.
Well, that'll be an honor, and that'll be a lot of fun, no doubt about it. And today is your stage, Dr. Weisz, and I want to honor you with literally, like I shared, opening the show here. I went to your site last night. Actually, I've gone a few times, but I took the time to go through the full-length video of your great-grandfather, and the story was incredibly touching. I mean, as you're watching right now, as you're listening, it's all relative, the problems you have, we have, I have, right? And the reality is how we deal with those problems. And I was so touched by what your grandfather said and the simple thing that made him happy, right?
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
I'd love for you to share why. I mean, you have multiple companies, you have multiple interests between softball, basketball, your family, a husband, your kids. How do you do it all? How does Dr. Jeremy Weisz actually, balance? What is balance to you? Do you believe in balance? How do you get all the things done that you're doing on a daily and weekly and monthly basis?
Yeah. Well, my first answer is always just sleep less. So.
That's the short version, right?
Right. But it kind of goes back to motivation. And, people would always ask, what motivates you? What motivates you to do what you do? And it's the motivation, kind of what you alluded to, and the inspiration behind Inspired Insider, which is helping people tell their great stories to leave a legacy. And that comes from my grandfather. And there's a video on the site that it's very personal. I've never really told this story, Dan, public, for a long, long time, and I put it on my site because it's very personal, but I never really talked about it. And it comes down to a video that I have from my grandfather who survived the Holocaust, and there was the Holocaust Memorial Foundation interviewed him to get on record the atrocities that happened to him and his family. And he's not alive anymore, but I still have that video, and I still watch it on a monthly basis that touches me. And what he says at the end, kind of what you're alluding to, he goes into graphic detail about kind of what happened. That is, basically they sent his whole family to the gas chambers, and I won't get into all of that, but at the end they said, at the end, what makes you happy? What makes this so that you survive and live on happier? And he says when his first grandson was born, he knew it was all worth it, all the struggle, all the surviving, being whipped and whatever else he had to go through. And that first grandson was me. And so I look at that as a huge weight on my shoulders to do whatever it takes in whatever I'm doing. And that I think about that, and like you said, it's in my mind of if you're thinking about giving up or I'm thinking about this day's too hard, I just compare it to what he went through, and there's no excuse. There's no excuse for me to make excuses.
Well, I am going to imagine this, Dr. Jeremy Weisz. I imagine your grandfather is looking down upon you, and he is incredibly, incredibly proud. And
I appreciate that.
Yeah, we got a chance to meet through a good friend, Joe Polish, ultimately, on Genius Network, and we had a chance to meet each other at Joe's office here, I don't know, 2 months ago, was it?
Yeah.
Give or take. And, the thing that resonates with me about you is you're a giver. And, we talked about it in a previous episode about Adam Grant's book, Give and Take. And, you give and you give and you give. And, you're the sign of servant leadership. And I think, the part of the story that your grandfather shared in that video that just really took it. As you're watching right now, have you ever been in a place at a crossroads where you've gone, should I let go of this or move forward? Well, your grandfather talked about, the time when he was in the concentration camp and he was down to 70 pounds. He hadn't eaten for, multiple days. He was, basically a weakling, and, they were required to work, blue collar type work. And he collapsed right on the ground. And that was a defining moment. And the way I took it that was so powerful is in that moment, he gave up. And he said, this is it. I'm ready to just, surrender.
Lay here.
Lay here. And someone came over, a stranger, if you will, came over to him, nudged him and said, get up, get up, get up, get up. They're going to kill you if you don't. Come on, get up. And he encouraged him. And that stranger, that little bit of encouraged your grandfather to get up. And ultimately, he then, in the opposite moment, he said, I deserve it. I want to live. And now is my time. And you're a part of that legacy. And it's so tight. And I want to encourage you to go watch that video as you're watching right now or listening right now. I can't do it justice, Dr. J, by any means. But, it was so touching because I think all of us deal with the potential of obstacles, dangers, loss, fears, concern, and we get to that crossroad, and what's that difference between those who say, I'm going for it or I'm giving up? And I want to challenge you because as you're watching right now and listening, you do deserve the best. You are a winner. You are a champion. You have a seed of potential inside of you that's untapped. And I know that, Dr. Weisz, you have been able to heal. You've been able to help. You've been able to help people reduce suffering over the course of your career. And I'd love to dive into a few of the practices that you utilize. And before we go there, though, what do you feel are one of the misconceptions that people have about success? You having interviewed all these hundreds and hundreds of thought leaders all over the world, what would you say are some of the misconceptions or myths about success that you'd love to shake people and go, you just don't get, you don't understand, right?
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
That's a great question. And it comes up time and time again, which is we see these people in the media and their huge successes. And when you talk to people one-on-one, you realize the success was not overnight. We see, someone made $10 million or someone, got an Olympic gold medal, you don't see the 10 years of grind that they went through to get there. You don't see them waking up at 6 in the morning, staying up till 4 in the morning, working on or doing whatever they need to do. And I think that's the biggest, in my opinion, misunderstood misconception is that, oh yeah, these people just showed up and one day they were successful. It took tons of time, energy, and effort, and mentors that helped them along the way. You know, they didn't do it alone. So I think the two things is, one, it takes that constant effort and grind, and two, mentors and people to help. You know, we don't do it alone. People have coaches. They have mentors who have been there and done that to help guide them through to make it, to shorten that process and make it easier.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So let me see if I've got this right. What you're saying is that there is no success that's overnight, despite what the theoretical stories might be. It's almost like that bamboo tree story, right? Where you plant the seed and it germinates a little bit and it grows like 3 inches in a year, or 6 inches, and then 5 years later it just starts to really sprout, and then all of a sudden it's 100 feet tall, right? The Chinese, I think it's the Chinese bamboo tree. So in many ways you're talking about that. What we don't see the roots underneath. Right? We only see what comes out, and we make that judgment call. And I agree. I see something very similar, and it's a shame because I see a lot of people quit because they compare themselves to others. I think one of the biggest atrocities, if you will, for all of us, I find myself doing this too, is comparing ourselves to other people. What would you say to someone who, maybe beats themselves up, is harder on themselves that they need to be? And I know we're going to go to a break in just a moment, but I'd love to get your quick take on that, and then we'll revisit that after the break.
Sure. So you want me to answer that now?
If you want to go ahead and get it started, that'd be great.
Yeah. So repeat the question really quickly.
Yeah. What would you say to someone that might be in a position where they beat themselves up, they're hard on themselves, as a strategy they can use to give themselves that grace that they deserve?
When I find myself beating myself up, I kind of go back to whatever story is for you, which is just being grateful for something.
Being grateful for something. And I think that speaks volume, because I truly believe that gratitude precedes the miracle. And when we come back, Dr. Jeremy Weisz is going to share strategies that he's learned and all the wisdom that he's worked with over the years. That and a whole lot more coming up on growthtofreedom.com. Welcome back to growthtofreedom.com, the show that helps you transform your life, business, and relationships, providing you more clarity, confidence, and capabilities. If you're just joining us, let's summarize the first segment of the show. We've got Dr. Jeremy Weisz, who's a husband, a dad. He's very interested in sports, basketball, fast-pitch softball. He's the founder of multiple companies, Insider.com, Chiropractical Solutions, chiropractor, jobfinder.com, and a producer at Mixergy. To start, on top of that, he's worked with hundreds and hundreds of thought leaders all over the world. He's an inspiration. He's a servant leader. And overall, he's been talking about how to deal with obstacles. I mean, you've got him, right? I mean, what's that obstacle you've got right now that, if you were to, shed it away, that would make your life, what's getting in the way of your personal and financial success? Well, think about that. Because Dr. Jeremy Weisz has been talking about success and the misconception of success. He's been talking about the seeds of greatness. He's been talking about how mentors and coaches play an important role, and how if you're maybe like I was and beat myself up on a regular basis, what is a strategy that you can put in place? And it starts with gratitude, because gratitude precedes the miracle. So I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into that, Dr. Weisz, and talk about, and all the people that you've worked with, and how have you changed over the last few years as a result of being able, I look at you in many ways like a modern day Napoleon Hill, if you will, who wrote the book Think and Grow Rich. You've had a chance to meet hundreds and hundreds of the leading experts in the world in all kinds of industries. How have you been personally impacted to be a better dad, a better husband, a better leader?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, what I've learned is don't do it all yourself. Find mentors in whatever, if it's about happiness, it's about love, it's about business. Find a mentor who has done what you want to do. And it really hit home for me. I was interviewing a person who started a company, nonprofit called Immerman Angels, and it's the largest one-on-one cancer support community, I think, in the world. And so if you have, breast cancer, they will connect you with someone who had breast cancer and survived breast cancer, and to get you through that. And I think just finding that mentorship is huge. And after that, I talked to him, it really hit home for me. Like, why do we try and just live in our own world and do it ourselves? Like, if we're having an issue, if we're having something going on that we're trying to overcome, or even see pitfalls before they even happen, find someone who has done what you want to do and who is, if they are a successful entrepreneur, have family values like you do, find that person and see what they did to get there. And that's really changed me, is just reaching out, not trying to be in my own bubble and figure things out for myself.
Yeah, and it takes a grace to be able to do that, doesn't it?
Yes. And you have to be humble and just say, I don't know. I don't know. Can you help?
Yeah, one of the most powerful phrases any of us can learn is, I don't know and I need help, right?
Yeah.
And, I think of what, like what you do on a regular basis in Chicago as a chiropractor and a healer. And, what would you say? I mean, because there's a lot of myths, a lot of false programming, a lot of limited programming, a lot of limiting beliefs that we've been surrounded by, right? Mm-hmm. Which are things like, if we want something, we were taught this when we were 5 years old, if we want something done right, do it ourselves, right? Yeah. And so that goes completely against this idea of going out and go, I don't know, let me find help, right? Because now there's this perception that we don't look smart, or the idea that collaboration is a bad thing. They called it cheating in grade school, right? I don't know how many times I ended up in the principal's office because of that one. I should have had a parent that said, "Hey, no, I'm teaching my son collaboration, and soon he'll be hiring your kids anyway." But nonetheless, what would you say to someone who's bad? I'm sure you've seen this in your clinic, and although we might talk about it in this term of chiropractic, you've also seen it in your practice as a healer, as a coach, someone who works with so many people all over the world. What would you say to someone who's really got that barrier and they're just stiff up against it, going, I'm stuck, and I don't know that I believe that I need to let go and let other people give me guidance. What would you say to that?
Yeah, that's because it is that balance. It is that balance of, well, if I ask that question or if I ask for help, you don't look smart. If you're heading up your company and you seem like you don't know what you're doing, they're not going to have confidence in you. And, it's all about, I guess, shifting on what people think about you. And so what I always think about is, who cares about me? If I'm trying to serve someone else, or if I'm trying to help someone else, like if my business, let's say something's going on and I need to improve it, I think about the employees and what that means to them if it's not going well. So I kind of take the focus off of myself and think about others. And it kind of goes into, if I'm constantly looking at myself, I'm maybe nervous or just not sure. But if I'm looking at someone else and thinking, well, how can I help them, or how's this going to affect them? And so that's what I do. I put the focus on that, on the other people around me. And if I didn't, what it would mean if I didn't get that information. And so for me, it becomes more painful to not ask than to ask.
Oh, that's incredibly powerful. More powerful to not ask, right? The lever you're creating for yourself.
Yeah,
it's more painful than to actually ask in the first place. Is that right?
Yeah.
So how do you see this showing up, for example? Like, someone comes in, they're having some issues, right? Because, there's cause and effect. And they have a neck pain, let's say, right?
Yeah.
And I know that's actually part of your inspiration of getting into chiropractic, with family who were having some pains.
Yeah.
So someone has a neck pain, but it's not the neck issue, it's other things. So what would you say to that person in dealing with it and go, you need to realize it's not your neck that's the issue, it's the things that you're doing, like with your core or other things like that are really the issue overall?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. And it kind of goes into, the way I approach it is I serve the pain first, So even though I may know they're sitting at the desk for 7-10 hours a day, slouching, they probably aren't eating the best, they may be drinking bad things, they may be doing other things that are contributing it, I really address where they're at first. and say, okay, let's help with your pain. And once I show them some results with what they came in with, then I slowly interject, well, this could be because, are you slouching at the computer? Or are you sleeping on your stomach and your head's turned to one side and that's completely kind of putting a kink in your neck? Or, just so is your computer monitor off to the side? So I address what they're there for and what their need is first, and then I kind of slowly educate them on things they could be doing to help, because then they'll be more open if I actually address what they're there for and get them some results.
And it sounds like, as it relates, I mean, what you're really doing is building trust. All relationships are built over time, right? Of course, so it's relationship capital. It sounds like your approach is serving them today in the moment to help provide some relief, that bridges trust, to then ultimately help come in and install, in many ways, Dr. Weisz, a permanent solution for them. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
And I mean, we could take
said.
it outside of, the chiropractic world with someone dealing with pain, and we could even, look at the same kind of a mindset in business. And when we come back, I want to break this down because Dr. Weisz has been sharing some incredible nuggets. I've literally already got 3 pages of notes. So when we come back, Dr. Weisz is going to go more into depth on some of his favorite growth hacks, favorite strategies to transform your life, health, and relationships. That and more coming up right after this. Welcome back to growthtofreedom.com, providing you more clarity, confidence, capabilities, help you transform your life, business, and relationships. I'm Dan Kuschell. Again, thanks for making us part of your day. If you're just joining us, let's summarize the first 2 segments of the show. We have Dr. Jeremy Weisz, the founder of InspiredInsider.com, Chiropractical Solutions, ChiropractorJobFinder.com. He's a producer of Mixergy, and he's been revealing and sharing some of his best strategies to overcome obstacles. And I mean, I've literally got 3 pages of notes here, so I'm going to do my best to summarize in a short period. Number 1, be grateful. The best way to overcome the feeling of insecurity, the feeling of doubt in yourself, is to start with gratitude. Attitude precedes the miracle. That success isn't built overnight. It's the seeds of greatness, the things that the invisible creates the visible as far as the work goes. Find mentors, find coaches. Don't do it alone. Don't do it yourself. To go up, you've got to grow up with mentors who can help take you to other levels. And he talked about how to be able to look at dealing with an obstacle, a challenge. If he's coaching somebody, whether it's in his chiropractic business or in many ways in any business, number 1, identifying what you really want. Number 2, what's getting in the way. And then go right to the heart to provide a solution right here and now to provide relief up front, establish trust, to then build a long-term relationship, to then be able to go in and install a permanent solution. Isn't that what you want? I know that's what you want. I know that's what I want. I want greater peace mentally, physically, socially, emotionally, financially. Don't you? Well, that's what Dr. Jeremy Weisz is sharing with you today. And we promised you our free gift package today, didn't we? And I want to make sure to get that to you because this is a very special gift package. It's from us to you. It's free. There's no shipping. We're going to give it to you digitally. It includes 2 of our best-selling books, literally thousands and thousands of copies all over the world for that matter. We've got Walking with the Wise with over 30 of the top mentors in the world. We've also got our book, A Champion in the Making, Awaken the Champion Within Your Life, Business, and Relationships. We've got our audio program, our video program, tools and resources to provide you what? More clarity, confidence, capabilities. I mean, do you want to be better at influence? The ability to lead yourself to bigger and better growth and freedom? I mean, you deserve it. So you can get your free gift package right now, valued at $197 when you pick up the phone and call 602-246-3389. That's 602-246-3389. We've only got a limited amount of copies, so we want to do that right now, 602-246-3389, or go to our website at growthtofreedom.com/gift. Now, Dr. Jeremy, I'd love for you to share. I mean, you work with people in health. You work with people in growth. You work with people in business. You've worked with some of the leading thought leaders in the world. I'd love to know some of your rituals, some of your habits that you put in place on a daily basis that helps you be your best self. Could you share some of those?
Yeah, and I think the most valuable resource we have is time. So I'm always looking at how I can, shave some time or save time. We all are. And a couple resources and things that I use on an hour-by-hour basis is I use this software. It's called eNounce, and eNounce basically speeds up any audio or video on the web. And so, like, when I'm going to listen to you before we come on, I'm listening to a great interview, you and John Ruhlin, John Corcoran, and I can speed it up to 3 times and listen to the whole thing, both of them and more today, just because I can, save time and still get that learning in. So that's one big thing that I use on a hour-by-hour basis that really helps me. And another thing with time is, obviously we talked about mentorship, how it's important in speeding that learning curve. And so I am a huge rabid Audible person, listen to Audible, like about 3 to 6 books per week, and just to get that knowledge of people so I don't have to maybe suffer or kind of go around the mistakes that they made, and listen to podcasts and shows like yours and other people interviewing successful people. So those are a few things I do on a daily basis to really save time or to avoid any pitfalls I may get into.
And it sounds like what you've done is you've really installed an accelerated learning system by using eNounce.com, and then listening to different podcast shows that you select, as well as Audible.com. And what a great little that's a great little tool. I mean, literally you can go through books or podcasts in a third of the time, and imagine at the end of 1 year, if you're able to do that compared to someone who isn't, how much more have you grown? How many more capabilities have you developed as a result? Now, when we come back, Dr. Weisz, what I'd love for you to do is I'd love for you to kind of give us an outline of like a day. Like when you wake up, like what do you do for your health? Like what types of foods maybe do you eat? What maybe you recommend? What are some of the health exercise practices? And then some of the coaches, mentors you learn from? That and a whole lot more to share how to transform your life, business, and relation with Dr. Jeremy Weisz right after this. Welcome back to growthtofreedom.com, providing you more clarity, confidence, capabilities to help you transform your life, business, and relationships. We've got Dr. Jeremy Weisz joining us. And let me summarize the first few segments of the show. We've got Dr. Weisz talking about the seeds of greatness. You can tell the size of the person by the obstacles it takes to knock them off track. And you want to get on track, you want to find a coach, you want to find a mentor, someone who's been there, done it. You want to go up, grow up, and have a mentor to take you up the ladder. If you're dealing with self-doubt, you're dealing with insecurity, one of the first steps to champion yourself is gratitude. Gratitude precedes the miracle. In addition, we've been talking about being a servant leader and a way to look at doing that. Number one, identify the number one question, which is what do you want? Number two, what's getting in the way? Number three, how can I serve them now? Provide them some solution to build trust, develop the long-term relationship, and then be able to install a permanent solution. And you do this extremely well, Dr. Weisz. I have to admit, I mean, there's a lot of wisdom that I think that rubs off on the fact that you've worked with countless number of patients. You've also worked with countless number of thought leaders. And as we closed out the last segment, you talked about 2 incredibly simple, yet effective, if not transformational, time management strategies that literally to give people a boost, an installation of accelerated learning by using eNounce.com, which helps condense down the time rates and the speeds of the audio programs, the books that you might read. One of the great leaders of our time, right? Charlie Tremendous Jones, you've probably read and heard some of his stuff. He says that your success is dependent on the people you hang out with and the books you read. And you're a true master at that. I mean, 3 to 5 books a week. I thought I read a lot of books and consumed a lot of program, but I'm not even close to that. I'm about one a week at this point. So what would you say, like, what does your day look like? What are some of the habits, the rituals, the practices, not only that you use, but if you were talking to Dr. Weisz, so this would be little Jeremy at 15, 16, 17, 18, you were just getting into adulthood, getting ready to restart your business career. What advice would you give you on how to set up your day to build that momentum for success?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I would talk to little Jeremy and tell him to put in systems. It's the non-sexy thing that I believe makes people and me much more efficient so we can do everything we want to do. And when I say that, and about the health perspective and the business perspective, put in systems so if it's there, you just do it. So like the health system, and I'll admit I am not 100% a beacon of health. Like I have the worst sleep habits. I should be getting more sleep. So when I tell people there's certain things that I need to improve on myself. But as far as the systems go, like I will, one resource I always look at is the Blue Zones, and this guy Dan Buettner actually worked with National Geographic and the world's best longevity researchers. So for health purposes, I look at that and what can I be doing as far as a system, and for that they study there's certain areas in the world that you're 10 times more likely to live to 100 or greater. And one of them, the two simple things that I found from that increased longevity was they found that people ate a handful of nuts every day. So we can go off, you go into all these details on you should be taking this supplement or this exercise or this. So the biggest things I got out of it was, one, have a handful of nuts a day. So I just keep like a bag of almonds within hand's reach of me at work.
Yep.
And grab for that and drink tons of water. Some people say half your body weight in ounces in water. So I keep a 20-ounce container of water and I'll just fill it up, 5 times throughout the day. So from a health systems, I keep those two things. And there's other things I do with health, but like a B complex, they take a magnesium supplement, a fish oil. I have, try and eat 7 to 9 fruits and vegetables, but I try and keep it very simple, which is bag of, handful of nuts, drink half body weight ounces in water, and try and have 7 to 9 fruits or vegetables every day. And then from the business perspective, systems, there's several systems I use. I use acuity scheduling, which basically I found when I email people back and forth, I'm trying to make a date or an appointment, or whether it's for work or social, it takes so much time. And so I use that and just send them a link to my schedule and say, choose any time. And I have all open times of what they can choose. And so it makes people not be frustrated with me if we're going back and forth, and saves a lot of time. So from the health perspective, from the business perspective, just certain systems that make things more efficient, like acuity scheduling and other things that I use.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to take your recommendation on acuity scheduling because I know sometimes my schedule can be a nightmare. And, going back and forth, I was just thinking as you were describing that, what it must be like dealing with me sometimes. And, instead of a handful of nuts, people would say I'm a handful of nutty in the way I operate sometimes. And so, that's great. And it's so simple, right? And it's the simple things repeated over and over and over again that, as you said, maybe not that sexy, but they're effective, they're efficient.
Yeah.
And it builds momentum, too, for success, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It puts it in place. You don't have to think about it, essentially.
Yep, it becomes, it's that, 4 stages of learning, right? Unconscious, incompetent, right? We don't know what we don't know. Then it moves and transitions to now we become consciously incompetent, meaning we are now starting to realize, holy cow, now I know what I don't know, and I'm kind of goofy, right? Then we go to the conscious competent stage. That means we're kind of thinking about the action. And then we go to the unconscious competence, where it's like the back of our hand. It's as easy as riding a bike. It's easy as driving a car after 10 years of practice, hopefully with good habits and not texting and stuff like that. So I think that's really what you're getting at here, is developing these simple habits, simple rituals that are repeatable and become effortless and almost unconscious. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. You said it, and you can kind of just almost forget it. It doesn't take up mind space throughout your day.
And speaking of mind space, one of the biggest things that I think people deal with, Dr. Weisz, and you may see this in your clinic, you've probably seen it with the thought leaders you've interviewed, and probably addressed it in many different ways. But again, you have so much wisdom to really condense down the wisdom, is the fear of failure and the fear of success. Right?
Yeah.
And I've had a chance, like you, to work with some of the top leaders in the world. We deal with the highest level entrepreneurs in the world with Genius Network and Joe Polish's group. And fear of success actually is a bigger issue than many people would realize, even with the highest performers in the world. And on the opposite end of that, there's fear of failure, right? So what would you say to someone who is really, you're looking at them and you're going, you're sabotaging your own success in some way, and it's either that fear of success or fear of failure that they're really, limiting themselves. It's that limiting belief. What advice would you give them?
Yeah. So as far as the fear of failure, it's so deep, right? It comes from somewhere that sometime they experienced this, and now they have that fear, or it's something, again, I think it goes back to finding a mentor of who's done what you want to do and who's been through some of what you've been through. And it goes back to this. I interviewed this lady. She was an Olympic athlete, and she got into an accident and was a paraplegic. And she's laying in the bed, like waking up and looking around. She literally can't move. And getting back to, your whole identity is being an Olympic athlete and being an athlete, and that's taken away from you. And I remember what she told me is she just felt sorry for herself. She, it was hard for her to even have a goal, like why even live? Why even do this? And she kind of looked around, and there was a lady in worse shape than her, and who was happy, who was friendly, who had a great outlook. And she started talking to this lady and just getting advice on how she was thinking the way she was thinking, and how she got through the mindset of, living with and getting through it and learning to walk again.
Yeah.
And so that I always think about that is just find that person who, if you have that, whatever you're trying to do, whatever success means to that person, whether it's health or business, find that mentor who can kind of guide you and kind of help you and give you advice and avoid some of those pitfalls.
Yeah, and a great question I think of as you bring that up in that example is the question, compared to what and or compared to who,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And, whatever you're dealing with, as you're watching right now, as you're listening, you might have obstacles. You might be dealing with a potential divorce. You might be dealing with some business failure or personal failure or personal transgressions that you're not proud of. Well, guess what? At the end of the day, compared to what? Compared to who? Because I can promise you, right, Dr. Weisz, I mean, you've seen this too, there's someone who's got it worse off.
Yeah.
And it just lends perspective. And I think what you shared earlier in the first segment of the show, the idea about gratitude. And gratitude does precede the miracle. You want to transform your life? Start every day with the idea of what am I grateful for right now? You want to transform it even more? End your day with what am I grateful for? I practice this with my kids. I practice it with my wife. And it's so interesting because of timing, right? Right now, my mom is in a hospital, and she's a shell of what she was even a week ago. She can't remember my wife's name. She doesn't know what my kids' birthdays are, and it's sad. And, I have issues, right, that I was thinking about some complaints I had earlier there. I went and visited her in the hospital last night, and I heard her she's trying so hard to remember, and she can't. And it's paralyzing to her. And for me, what it was a perspective go, you know what? I don't have it that bad. Any of the things I might be dealing with, distress, right, health, whatever, is nothing compared to that. And it puts that perspective into place. And, and at the same time, we always want to look to strive to be better, be our best selves, to build, as Joe Polish calls it, building a bigger future. And one thing I'd love to get your take on as it relates to that, growth, freedom, being able to be our very best. I think there's a fine line in true leadership between this idea of being self-disruptive and self-destructive overall. And I'd love to get your perspective of what you have found in all the leaders you've worked with, that maybe where is that fine line of leadership in self-destructive versus self-disruptive, which is healthy? Yeah.
And, thinking about that, I feel like leaders have both qualities. And they may fluctuate. Like self-destructive, I picture as someone who kind of knows it all, who's not necessarily asking for help. We think we know everything, maybe not being open. And the behaviors are, we're combating behaviors that are going to help us. And I think there's, degrees of that in every person. And the self-disruptive leaders I picture as humble leaders who are grateful, who are, practice appreciation and always looking for a better way and not being content and having that humility. And then it kind of goes back to when we were sitting and I visited you, and we're sitting and talking, and we're in a library of thousands of books.
Yep, Joe's library, Joe Polish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you and Joe, that's how you are. You basically surround yourself with great people. You surround yourself with great books, and you're always learning and always looking to what else is out there. And that's kind of what I picture, is you're sitting there and you're just in a library full of books, and that's kind of what I picture in the kind of self-disruptive leader. Just what else? How can we do it better?
And speaking of what else, I'd love to give you the opportunity. Where can people reach you, Dr. Weisz? We've got about 30 seconds here.
Yeah.
Where can people reach you to get more information?
Just go to inspiredinsider.com and check out some of the interviews. They're free, and if you need to reach me there's a contact button. But I'm on all the social media too. InspiredInsider.com.
I recommend you go there. I know time flies when we're having fun. I know I feel smarter with you on the show, Dr. Weisz. I'd love to have you back. And as you're watching right now, I appreciate you. Now is your time. Take the first step. You can get a recap of the show at growthtofreedom.com/13. Seize the day. Make it a great week.